There are a lot of ways to play your favorite game these days, but often I find that my favorite ways to play are the ones I least expect. And one such case is the Hi10 Max from Chuwi. This is an x86, that means Windows-based tablet, with a gorgeous 12.96-inch display, 12 gigs of RAM, 512 gigs of storage, Wi-Fi 6, Bluetooth 5.2, and Intel's happy camper budget CPU, the Intel N100. This is Shem from the future, just checking in to tell you that the Hi10 Max has actually been upgraded now to use the Intel N150, and that they've upgraded it with no extra cost to you, which I think is great. There's not a massive difference between the N100 and the 150, just slightly higher clock speeds on the 150, and maybe some better graphical performance too. So yeah, all good, but just know that from now on, this device has the 150, not the 100. And there are a bunch of reasons why I think that this is an excellent gaming device. And in fact, I think that in a lot of ways, this could be the ideal gaming device for some people. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more soon, but let me just cover my bases first. First of all, I just want to tell you that Chuwi did send me this device to review, but no money was exchanged and they haven't seen the video before it's gone live. All opinions are my own and they had no influence over the video whatsoever. And the other base I have to cover here is that this is essentially a Windows computer, not just a dedicated gaming device. But I should talk a little bit about it being a computer as well. By itself, the Hi10 Max is every part a tablet. It's a big square rectangle, it has a multi-point touchscreen, and well, just look at it, it's a tablet. It also comes with this faux leather effect case, which magnets onto the back and doubles as a weird kickstand, but it does work. Now optionally, but not really optionally, you can get a keyboard. And this keyboard magnets to the bottom of the device and connects via pogo pins, and doubles as a kind of screen cover as well. And when you have this hooked up like this, you can see this is essentially a laptop. What Chuwi is going for here is to compete on the low end with Microsoft's hella expensive Surface tablet line. And I think they do a pretty good job everywhere that it counts. The Intel N100 chip is not the most powerful in the world at all, but it gets the job done as far as basic computer usage. Web browsing, document editing, Microsoft Paint if you're into that kind of thing. And in general, it's just kind of okay. It's also quiet, and just sips power. And there are two particularly surprising elements of this experience that I want to mention. Firstly is the display. It is a 3:2 aspect ratio, which yes is awesome for gaming and we'll look at that in a second, but it's also excellent for web browsing, coding, and text editing. Honestly, this is my favorite aspect ratio that you can get on a laptop and it's just awesome to see it in tablet form. It's a much more squarish display than your typical 16:9 TV style displays. And the second really good part for general usage is the keyboard. Now you do technically have to buy this separately, or in a bundle, and you'll find links to all this stuff below. But the keyboard cover is actually really good. The keys feel fantastic, it feels high quality, it's even got a little bit of RGB LEDs going on here, and the trackpad feels pretty great too. You can also get a stylus, and it's a full Wacom style stylus with 4096 levels of pressure. Now I crushed Windows into a tiny ball of paper and tossed it out the window a while ago, and I've been using Arch Linux since then of course. And unfortunately I couldn't get the pen to work in Arch Linux, so I'm not going to show it here. But what I will say is that the pen, whereas it has all this impressive Wacom style technology, it doesn't really work very well on this laptop. Even with Windows, it's just not really powerful enough to keep up with stylus input. So your pen is more like a glorified mouse cursor than it is an artist's tool. So anyway, I think the Hi10 Max is a really cool laptop, but you know what I think it's even better as? An all-in-one retro game emulation station. Because when was the last time that you saw a device with a screen this big, in this compact of a form factor, that can run a gaming dedicated operating system like Batocera? Honestly, there aren't many of those around. And if you can find them, they're probably not around $300 like this one is. And this is why I think the Hi10 Max is such a magic device. It's a 2K resolution and a 3:2 aspect ratio. This means it looks absolutely gorgeous for any type of retro game that you want to play on it. That is particularly true for Game Boy Advance, because GBA is going to completely fill the screen at more or less integer scaling. And even if you're not integer scaled, everything's so big that it doesn't matter anyway. But also the likes of PSP or Dreamcast with 16:9 aspect ratios look absolutely amazing. And retro games like Mega Drive with a 4:3 aspect ratio fill out most of the screen as well. I think that 3:2 is really the best of all worlds. It fits most retro gaming systems perfectly and modern games too. And then you have the I/O on the Chuwi Hi10 Max. On the left hand side you've got two USB-C ports. Both of these can be used for charging, and they both support 10GB per second data transfer, which is more than enough for running an operating system like Batocera off of a USB stick, for example. Both of these also support display output, in case you want to connect to a bigger screen. And if you don't want to use the USB-C ports for that, there is a micro HDMI connector here for some reason too. But what I really love is on the right hand side, you're going to see a USB-A port. This is absolutely fantastic, because it means that you can connect your standard USB hub or a 2.4 GHz wireless dongle for your favorite controller. I think that this port in particular just gives this device so much flexibility. It makes it so expandable. Yeah, I know you can just use a dongle on the USB-C ports, but come on, USB-A, that's awesome. Or at least it will be for another year or two, hopefully, and then we can finally ditch it for good. Also on this side is a headphone jack, which again is perfect. The speakers in the Hi10 Max are going to be pretty decent for your old plinky plonky chiptune-like music, but for anything more intense than that you might just want to use an external speaker, and this port works perfectly for that. This device does of course have Bluetooth 5.2 if you want to use wireless controllers, wireless speakers, or anything else. What I'm getting at here is that this is an incredibly flexible gaming device, even though that's not its intended purpose. But how about performance? Like I said earlier, the Intel N100 is nowhere near a powerful chip. It's actually Intel's most budget chip on the market, and it's already slightly outdated with the 150 and the 200 coming out. But still, it's no slouch for retro gaming. This will play all of your old 2D systems, PlayStation 1, Nintendo 64, Dreamcast, Sega Saturn, and PSP all perfectly well. In fact, most PSP games will actually play upscaled to 1080p, and they look absolutely marvelous on this display. Something I learned recently is that a lot of PSP games actually have cheats that enable you to change the aspect ratio of the game. So here I've set this game to use the full 4:3 aspect ratio, and it just looks fantastic. You're going to get the best performance in anything except for basically Windows, but to truly max it out you can use Batocera to get some really amazing performance in GameCube and PS2. GameCube is pretty much a shoo-in on this device actually. If you play it in the native resolution, pretty much everything runs at completely full speed. And most games will support at least a 720p upscaling, and the odd title will go up to 1080p as well. But even on a big screen like this, I think that the native resolution looks just fine. And PlayStation 2 is also extremely impressive on this device. You can use PCSX2 if you want, or because this is an x86 device, RetroArch will actually support the new LRPS2 core. And with this you can use all of your creature comforts of RetroArch like save states and stuff like that, and get some truly amazing performance out of PS2. There are plenty of PS2 games that are going to run full speed on this device. And for a device this compact and all-in-one for around $300, I think that that is absolutely fantastic. So all in all, I think that the Chuwi Hi10 Max is a really cool basic tablet/laptop combo, but where it really shines is as an all-in-one gaming system. That's how I use this laptop personally. When I just really quickly want to play some retro games on a bigger screen that's not just a tiny handheld, I can just kick this thing up on the kickstand and jump into anything up to GameCube and PS2 and be fairly confident that it's going to run great. It's also brilliant to bring to your friend's house, or even just out to a cafe or something and just play on the sly. Not that I would ever do such a thing. And that's why I really like devices like this. When I first saw it, I was like, well, I don't really need a tablet-laptop combo. But then I suddenly thought, wait, if this is a tablet that runs x86 operating systems, that means it can run Batocera. And if it can run Batocera, I don't need the keyboard attached because I can use a Bluetooth controller. And because I can now use a controller and Batocera, I now have an all-in-one gaming system, which is basically just a small TV. And I think that's just awesome. So let me wrap up with my likes and dislikes. The first thing I like is that this is a very competent laptop in its own right. Not for any intensive work by any means, but just for basic web browsing and stuff like that, it's pretty darn great. I think the keyboard attachment is fantastic. I think that the I/O, the USB ports, are absolutely fantastic too, and they leave very little to be desired. I think the display is absolutely gorgeous. The display really punches above its price range, and it's just really impressive overall, and it also works great for retro gaming. And that's my final like. This is a seriously good retro gaming device, and it cuts out a lot of the legwork of connecting your handheld or a console to a portable monitor or something like that. You can just do this all on this one device, and I think that's really cool. Not the biggest screen in the world, but not as small as a handheld either. As for my dislikes, I would say the stylus pen is kind of disappointing. Not because the thing itself doesn't work, but just because the Intel N100 really can't keep up with any kind of artsy work. So it's just kind of a waste. I'd also say the speakers. They're fine for basic use, but I think you're probably going to want a Bluetooth or a wired speaker for any serious use. And finally, I'd say the battery life, because the Hi10 Max has a pretty small battery and it only lasts around 4 to 5 hours maximum, and that's when you're not running it under load. When it's under load, it's more like 3 to 4 hours. For me, this isn't too bad because it charges so fast anyway, and as long as you take a smallish power brick with you, you're not going to have many problems. So that's a Chuwi Hi10 Max. A lesson in not judging a book by its cover, and maybe finding alternative use cases for other devices. Let me know what you think about it in the comment box below. Big thanks to Chuwi again for providing it for review, and I look forward to seeing you again next time. That part where you go over the ridge and you see the lake. I always forget about it, and it always blows me away. What a game. What a game. Oh my god. I'm done. There's no point playing anything else ever again. Goodbye.